So the day we've all been waiting for, the drop of the January 2022 U.S. Men's National Team World Cup qualifying roster. We'll break it down here with the goalkeepers first: Sean Johnson, Gabriel Slonina, Zach Steffen, Matt Turner. Defenders is where it gets very interesting with Reggie Cannon, Serginho Dest, Brooks Lennon, that's three right backs. Then Mark McKenzie called up over John Brooks, Chris Richards, Anthony Robinson, Miles Robinson, DeAndre Yedlin, and Walker Zimmerman. So what? We have four natural right backs. Reggie Cannon has been playing as a center back for Boavista, so maybe that's something he will get a look at in this camp. But the big snubs in the defenders, in my opinion, are Joe Scally and John Brooks. Scally gives cover at left back and right back. Brooks Lennon is trash. I mean, he's a decent MLS player, I guess, but he looked completely awful against Bosnia. And that's where I think MLS bias comes into effect when you have these camp cupcakes. Like, Brooks Lennon gets looked at for a while, and hey, when he's playing against other kind of players, I guess he looks good. And again, I think that's a big bias that happens. You have Joe Scally, who's looked so good again in Bundesliga in his first season over there. And he doesn't get called up. And then again, John Brooks, I'm guessing there really is some rift between him and Greg Berhalter. The fact that he's been getting called up, not been getting called up recently. I mean, it's been alluded to before that there's some issues with maybe his attitude or something, but his passing ability would be incredible against teams like El Salvador and Honduras, who are likely going to be parking the bus against us. So I think that's something that really should have been considered, calling him up. And then moving on to obviously the right back situation. We called it four right backs, and we only have one true left back. So I'm guessing Dest or Cannon will possibly play on the left occasionally. Or it might be cover for that left back spot. We'll see. Obviously, other players who could have been called up who can play left back other than Joe Scally. You have Sam Vines, DeJuan Jones, Jonathan Gomez are some players who could have been called up to fill that left back spot and give us proper cover there. But now moving on to the midfielders, we'll see some of Berhalter's boys and a good inclusion. Kellen Acosta, who's kind of seen as an 8, really should just be the backup 6 on the roster. He's not an 8. Tyler Adams, Luca De La Torre, and I think in the reality he's called up because Busio wasn't called up, who I believe seems to have COVID from what I've heard. I'm not sure if not Busio being excluded from the roster is a pretty big deal, especially if he's excluded over Leggett and Rodon. As you can see, Sebastian Leggett, Christian Rodon was in McKennie, Yunus Musa, and I think it's the same old Berhalter's boys in the midfield with Leggett, Acosta, and Rodon, and we'll likely be seeing them starting a match, unfortunately, which is not good because we've seen how those matches with them in the midfield generally go. Not going to be fun from a creativity standpoint, and considering the fact that Leggett, Rodon, Acosta kind of stunk it up against Bosnia. That's not a good sign against a Bosnian C-D side domestic roster. That's probably should have been enough to say for Berhalter to say, hey, maybe I should look at some other options in the midfield. You got Alex Mendes playing pretty well in Portugal, especially now that he knows how to defend, has an incredible left foot. You could have even gone Georgi Mihalovic, Cole Bassett, I guess Tanner Tessman. I'm not a big fan of him, but I mean, he's playing at a higher level, and maybe he deserves a look over two guys who really have not produced much recently. Leggett has a bit more than Rodon who 0 goals and 1 or 2 assists in his whole time. But again, I think it's the MLS camp creates a lot of biases that Berhalter tends to go with, his boys. That's why they're called Berhalter's boys. And I'm sure Brooks Lennon may end up being one of those guys. I was actually surprised that Aaron Long wasn't called up. But again, midfield, I think, is where we're severely lacking in cover. And Luca De La Torre would be considered cover, which is good. But if I would like to see him and Busio both on the roster. But Busio is out because of COVID. That's understandable. But hopefully both of them are called up over Rodon and Leggett in the future. Now moving over to forwards, Brent Aronson, of course, Paul Arriola, another Berhalter's boys, Jesus Ferreira, who I think actually is an interesting player because he does give you the dynamic of being able to drop in the midfield. He can play as a kind of a false nine. He plays as a striker. He can play on the wing a bit. He connects. I think he's a really good technical player, and I like his inclusion. Jordan Morris, verticality, he's pacey. He brings that. He can maybe fill in as a striker. Also, Ricardo Pepi obviously should be included. Christian Pulisic, Tim Weah, glad to see him included as he's coming back from fitness. Yeah, he had some issues. I forgot if it was a hamstring or something like that, but he's coming back. And Giassi Zardes, of course, another one of Berhalter's boys, unfortunately called up. I just don't get it. Daryl DK is getting back into fitness. You got Jordan P. Falk. I don't think has played much recently, but I think it's another, again, he sees those guys in his camp, and that bias tends to happen. You'll see those MLS guys called up. I mean, I just don't get it. Hopefully, if Pepe gets a rest, it is Ferreira as the 9, or even Jordan Morris. I know he hasn't played there in a while, but I just don't get calling up a player like Zardes, who really is not even close to fit, has not played a competitive match in a while. But I mean, MLS quota is what people say there is, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the truth. But in the end, I mean, I give the roster a C. The fact that we only have one true left back is a big deal. I mean, Joe Scally really should have been called up. I think the big omissions probably are also James Sands. I think he would have been good to see him get an opportunity as a backup 6 in one of these matches. Another one, yeah, Joe Scally, James Sands, John Brooks. Got DK, P. Falk, even Josh Sargent, who just scored a goal right now. I mean, you've seen him play as on the wing. He presses, he runs a lot. I think he provides more than Ariola in the end if you're going to play him as a winger and all that. And hey, he scored a goal, which is nice to see literally while I was recording this video. And yeah, I mean, those are the main players who I think could have been included. Even Nicholas Iocchini, Alex Mendez can provide depth both on the wing and in the midfield. He has an incredible left foot. Rumors that we may lose him to Mexico, which would be very unfortunate. DeJuan Jones. I think I mentioned Sam Vines and him before also. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players who could have been included over some of these players that were brought in. It's not a terrible roster. It's not some of the rosters we saw, the squads that we saw selected in the past, but I still think there's some players called up who really shouldn't be, in players who could fill in those positions. Again, I think the big issue is going to be center back, left back, and the backup midfield situation. But at least we possibly have Luca de la Torre stepping in. If we do have rotation, he really could be a big player to help create for us in that midfield, and I hope he really gets the shot, because I mean, we do have 7 midfielders technically. That'd be quite poor if he's the one who's left out in favor of a legit Rodon or a Costa as an 8. But we'll see. It's Berhalter. You never know. At least Aaron Long, who hasn't played in forever, wasn't called up. But we are really missing some players like Brooks Scally, who I think could have made a difference. And there's some other players, obviously, I mentioned, like DK, who I think he deserves a chance in World Cup qualifying eventually, if not Nations League, to see how he plays at a higher level. So, I mean, there's still obviously Nations League coming up, and players could break in at that point. But I think there's a lot of players like James Sands, who really hasn't gotten a proper chance as a 6 with good players around him also. So I think some players like that you guys have seen. If not, you should check out 5 players who I think could make a difference for the U.S. men's national team. It's another video I posted recently. And a lot of those guys I mentioned right now are those guys like Ledesma, DK, Sands, De La Torre. So we'll see how the rest of this the World Cup qualifying window goes. It's 3 interesting matches, and I really hope a player like De La Torre can make his case. And I really hope there's no Brooks Lennon in any of these matches, because I just don't get that call up either. I think that's really one of the puzzling ones. But again, I think that attribute to MLS bias. I've seen people mention before there should be a European camp with some of the fringe players in Europe, and I think that's a big deal. That would be a big difference, because I mean, he spends all these like months with these MLS players and these camp cupcakes, and he kind of has his bias towards them, I feel like. And having a look at some of those players on the fringes in Europe, like Iocchini, Alex Mendez, would be Richie Ledesma, I think would be a big deal to hopefully to see some of those guys break in. Hopefully we see those guys included in Nations League. With that, guys, thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave your some of your suggestions, comments, some players who you think were left out, what your thoughts are on the roster in the comment section below. With that all, thank you for tuning in. I love you. I'll be staying out now, and I'll catch you guys later.